Hello and welcome to this Astranti video where we'll be going through the student survey responses for the May and August 2022 exam sitting for the CIMA Management Case Study exam. And the precinct company for this most recent sitting was Piping. So, let's see how students responded to the survey. Now, essentially what we did is we sent out a survey to gauge how students felt about the exam. We sent out this survey to a wide range of students, some including our students, others from other providers. So we've got a wide range of students that are evaluating the materials they received and how they viewed the exam. And those students provided lots of great feedback, seeing as we sent it out right after the exam, and students could remember the exact variance they received. So this survey is going to be very useful for those of you sitting the November 2022 exam, even though it's not on the same precinct company, because it'll help you prioritize what to work on depending on your situation. So learn from the people who came before you and try to pick up their habits, so that way then you can ensure your success in the next management case study exam. So let's take a look at the first bit of feedback we received. You can see that the question we're asking is how difficult students found the exam compared to what they expected. And it is good to see that a large number of students found the difficulty to be as expected. It could be that this was an easier exam, as the OCS and SCS were viewed as a bit more difficult. Or perhaps we managed to accurately determine the kinds of topics that would get asked in the precinct exam. Either way, what we can discern from the student feedback is that the mocks were crucial in helping to prepare for the exam. If you're a gateway student in particular, some students in the same situation said that they also wished they had revised more theory, especially on some of the more obscure topics like cost transformation, as it's not something they generally had to revise due to them being a gateway student. So I guess the long and short of it is don't neglect your theory if you're a gateway student in particular. Now on that note, you can see what students wish they had spent more time on, and if you've seen these survey videos before, you might think you're watching an older one because the stories here tends to be the same. Students wish they spent more time doing the mocks and revising the theory. Very rarely is this not the case. So if you're someone who believes they can get by without mock revision or getting the mocks marked, I would advise that you consider, at the very least, reviewing the CIMA past papers. You need to adequately prepare yourselves for the type of questions that can come up, the tone of them, the wording of them. Naturally, it's recommended you use mocks relating to the actual pre-scene, but past papers can take you some distance as well if you take the time to analyse the questions written for them. Now, we believe that mocks are the most effective way to practice for your exam, so that you can practice applying the financial knowledge you receive from the theory to the exam scenario. The other area of interest is theory revision. We can see here that 39% of students felt that they wish they'd revised more theory. Now, this is information you're expected to apply from your F2, P2 and E2 topics, and we'll get into this a bit more in the next slide. But as a quick bit of advice, mock practice will fill in the gaps in your theoretical knowledge better than straight revision. Now, if the mocks don't cover a specific topic that you wanted to come up, you do still need to go back and revise it. But at the end of the day, being able to practically apply that theory helps with remembering and learning how the theory actually works more than just straight revising it from a book. Now, to contrast this against what students should have spent more time on, we've got this other question asking students what they wish they had spent less time on. So starting off, the industry analysis is something that students generally wish they had done less of. Now, this is here to give you some context of the pre-scene company as it exists in the business environment. But it is not something you should spend the majority of your revision time actually reading and watching. Maybe spend a day or so on it, and best refer back to it when you need to pull some relevant examples or key information about the industry. But otherwise, the industry pack is there to supplement your knowledge, but it's not there to really provide concrete answers to your exam solution. They're there to help give it some flavour, give it a little bit more of a boost to gain those extra marks. Second, then, is the revision of theory, contradictory to the previous slide, where 39% of students thought that they should revise theory more, 36% felt that they should have revised less. Well, overall, this is a tough area to recommend advice on one way or the other. If a student goes into the exam and gets a question that they are not confident on, or did not revise, then they are naturally going to feel that they should have revised more theory. The reverse is true if another student did the exam and all the topics they understood came up. So the short answer is that you need to reflect on what topics you are comfortable with and what you are not comfortable with. Revise those topics that you don't understand well, and that will be a better use of your time than revising topics you're already pretty comfortable with. Lastly, we have the pre-scene analysis. Now, the pre-scene analysis is an important document. You cannot pass the exam without it. However, it is not something you should spend, again, all of your time reading. You need to look at the analysis, and then you need to practice applying that information to the mock scenarios. And the mocks will generally have what's called unseen material, information that isn't in the pre-scene that you then need to apply to the mock solution. But the pre-scene, what it crucially does is not only provide context, but also when you're writing your answer, you need to make sure it makes sense. You can't go writing about a company that has receivables if the pre-scene states quite explicitly that the business has no receivables. So it's important to get those technical areas correct to make sure there's consistency between your solution and the pre-scene company. Because in the real world, which is what these mocks are supposed to be, you are a manager at this company. So it would make sense that you should have an intimate knowledge of this company's financial situation. Then the last question we asked students was what tip they would give to future students. Now the big one is to always sit mock exams and get them marked. So that way then you can get valuable feedback on what you did right, what you did wrong. But if you take anything away from these tips, okay, and the last two are the ones that I would particularly draw attention to, is 1, to be a manager. You are a manager in this pre-scene company, so you've got to think like one, write reports like one. And another little bit of advice a student gave, which I keep putting in these videos because I think it's just perfect. It's a perfect summation of what you're expected to do in this exam. If it were your own business, what would you do? Put yourself in the shoes of a business owner and think about, well, if this was my business, what would I do to achieve these goals? Now, you have to be careful because you're not in a strategic position in the management case study exam. So you're not making choices that have big picture impacts on where the business is going. But what recommendations you may be asked to give, especially if you're asked to evaluate or give recommendations on a particular problem, it's always good to think of it from the position of a senior manager or even a business owner, because that would be the logical conclusion, isn't it? Well, what is the best option to take here in order to direct the business towards its end goals? And so that practically wraps up our little survey for the MCS exams in 2022. And if you enjoyed that video and would like to see more from us, be sure to like and subscribe, and consider following us on social media like Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, or go to our website linked in the description.